Did you just start taking progesterone and now are totally confused if you're supposed to take it every day or only for a couple of weeks or a week off? Or maybe you don't have a uterus anymore and you keep going back and forth whether you should be taking progesterone or not. And you heard that there are risks and benefits and you're not really sure what to do. Well, then this episode is for you because these are the questions you've asked on my YouTube channel. If you haven't gone to my YouTube channel yet, please go check it out. It's Hack My Age. The link to that is in the show notes. And it's a great place. It's a great community of women who are really have a chance to actually comment after you watch a video. It's really cool. And so that's where I gather my questions. So if you do have questions for the future, please go there and drop a question. And this is where I'll pick it up. But it's funny because whenever I do these solo episodes with your Q&As, they're always hormone related. And more often than not, they're progesterone related. So I've got loads of other episodes on progesterone, and I'll put a couple of them in the show notes if you want to just take a little deeper dive into it, or perhaps have other questions about it. Because I really want to just focus this and make it a quick episode to share your questions. And these are all valid questions, even if I have to repeat them. It's so confusing out there. But before I start, I also want to remind you that we have a great newsletter where I put content in there that's not on my social media. And usually they're quite bullet points. So it's not like a long drawn out article of things. You could just click on it and go right if you need it or not. And I always start my newsletters with, should I call it a newsletter? It's almost feels to me like a private email to you, because I just kind of say what's going on in my life, how I'm hacking menopause or the things that I'm doing. And also my perspective as a gerontologist. So it's a different perspective. So please go and check that out. Go to hackmyage.com. You can sign up to the newsletter there. And I also want to remind you that we do have a private support group. It's a support group. It's a community. It's a membership. I don't know what you want to call it. Group coaching. It's a place where you are able to jump in, read tons of content that I believe is worthy of reading and understanding in this menopause transition. And we also have live Q&As every week. We meet multiple times a week. I think last week we met 3 times. And it's not only with me for live Q&As and answering your questions or doing breath work classes, but also with my guests. So if you like my guests on the show, you get to meet them there in person. And we're still a very small group. Even today, we had a live Q&A and there were only 2 of you. So you get these guests all to yourself. You're not going to be drowned out by a big webinar of hundreds of women. So you can try it out for free for 7 days. So go check it out. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. It's called Biohacking Menopause. Now, also before I start, I also want to remind you that I am not a hormone expert. I would never call myself that. I've learned a lot over the years. I've taken courses on menopause and hormone therapy from many different practitioners. The first one I did, and one I really rely on a lot, is the one by Dr. David Rosensweet called the Menopause Method. It's with the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine. It's served me so well, not only for myself, but also for helping a lot of women in our community. So that's where this information comes from. And also keep in mind that different doctors and different programs out there have different methods of how to treat a woman through menopause and how you're going to prescribe hormones, if at all. And you probably know that a lot, because if you've been listening for a while, you know different people have different opinions. And these questions that I pulled out are from an episode that I did with Dr. Felice Gersch, who's an OBGYN. She's in Irvine, California. She's been treating women through menopause for almost 4 decades. So she's got her own approach and a lot of clinical experience, which is why I love tapping into her every so often. I've had her as a guest many times, but she takes a different approach, just like many other doctors do, than everyone else. And then sometimes it can be confusing. So that's why I'm here, and to give you some more help with that. And keep in mind also, no matter what Dr. Gersh says or what I say or what any of the specialists or doctors I have on the call or on the podcast, it's just general information. We don't know what your medical history is. We don't know what you're taking. We don't know if this is the right protocol for you or not. So it is just to bring you information that you can bring to your doctor. So with that in mind, always be skeptical about what you hear, whether it's from me or anyone else, or what something you've seen on TikTok. It could very well be appropriate for you, or it could be more harmful. So this is why we have guidance and we have professionals helping us through these things. So anyways, let's talk with the first question is from Sunshine 316-6. She says, progesterone cycling, is it the first 14 days of the month or after 14 days? She says, if postmenopausal 10 years, just starting now the estradiol patch, I would like to do cycling. So what days are recommended if progesterone is tolerated? Like, there's so many things to unpack here. So Yeah, you may have heard of there's progesterone cycling. Like you can take it statically every single day of the month, or you can take it 12 to 14 days out of the month. Okay, less than that puts you at risk for your uterine lining overgrowing, and that's at higher risk for uterine cancer. So we need to balance out the estrogen, which is proliferative, with the antidote, which is progesterone. So we have these imbalances. This is mostly why doctors prescribe progesterone. You have to take it. If you are on estrogen, you have to take progesterone. But if you're on progesterone, you don't have to take estrogen. There's different functions there. But the question is, if your doctor is cycling this for you, and the advantage of cycling, there's advantages and disadvantages. If you are in perimenopause, and this means you haven't hit that 12 consecutive months without your period, that's called postmenopause, but all the time leading up to that, your periods come, they go, your hormones are fluctuating. Doctors very often like to cycle in progesterone, meaning you take it for 14 days, just like you would during your menstrual cycle. So that's the second half called the luteal phase. So day one, it would be your bleed. And day 14 is when you would start the progesterone. And then you would take it for 12 to 14 days, right? Depending on if you're going by a 28-day cycle. But of course, if you're in perimenopause, sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's 30. So you have to learn how to bring it in and bring it out. Now, so that's the advantage of doing the 14 days. Now, if you are postmenopausal, like this woman here is 10 years postmenopausal, you get confused because you're like, I don't have a period anymore. What do I do? So if your doctor's prescribe this to you, then usually what they mean is you can do any of the 14 days of the month, or between 12 and 14, right? Sometimes you forget and it's not that bad. But if you go less than 12 days, doctors don't really like that because you're just put yourself more at risk of the uterine lining overgrowth. So you can choose whatever's easiest for you. And usually the doctor would say, okay, it's day 1 to day 14, calendar day 1 to calendar day 14, or calendar day 14 to 28, more or less. So what really matters is that you're just more consistent with that. And that's whatever it is that's easy for you to remember. So you have a uterus, you are 10 years postmenopausal, you could go by a calendar date if that's what your doctor has told you. And it's interesting, you also mentioned that if progesterone is tolerated, and that's a good thing to add because not all women are getting all these amazing benefits that we hear from progesterone, like better sleep, deeper sleep, no more night awakenings, you're no more racing mind at 2 a.m., you have more relaxed, you have less anxiety, your mood swings are gone, like all these amazing things. And yes, there are plenty of women who have that, but then there are women out there who have the opposite effect. It's called progesterone intolerance. And it's so frustrating because you hear everybody else raving about it and then you just feel bad. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that and some of the other questions, but it's something to keep note of. That's why there's no one size fits all with hormone therapy for menopause. It's got to be tailor made and everybody's responding differently. But I believe that just because you feel bad or worse, or it's not working for you, it doesn't mean to just give up. It means I give it an effort to tweak, to try to increase or decrease the dosage, to try a different delivery method, a spray, a gel, a cream, oral, whatever it is. There are many different ways. And sometimes we meet women who do try all the things, but yet their body's not able to detox some of these hormones. So it has nothing to do with the hormones, but just their body is unable to handle these hormones. So they need to go and deal with other things first, and then they can bring in the hormones, things like that. But this is where a menopause trained physician or practitioner would know exactly what to do. And as well as some side effects, there's women who have bleeding or women who get weight gain or who are bloated. Like these are, not very big deals. I mean, the bleeding can be, it depends why you're bleeding. We'll discuss a little bit about that. But starting on HRT, the first 3 to 6 months to have a bleed or a little bleed or nothing out of the ordinary, just a normal bleed isn't anything you really usually not to worry about. It's just, I'll go more into that a little bit later. But anyways, the one thing I do say, I personally like to test, not guess, because I still have my uterus. I'm taking estrogen, so I have to take progesterone. So what I do is I go to the doctor every year for a checkup and I just say, can you take a transvaginal ultrasound and check it out to see if my uterine lining is in the right thickness, right? And usually they say it has to be under 4 to 5 millimeters, more or less, generally. Everyone is a different case. So that's the way I do it. But the evidence shows that getting these routine scans in women without symptoms, meaning you don't have bleeding, don't really improve the outcomes. Like if you're worried about uterine cancer, for example, a doctor generally would say, look, If you don't have symptoms like the bleeding, and we can do a biopsy, we can do all these testing, and very often, not very often, I don't know how often, to be honest, it can, at least this is the argument against checking the uterine lining every year, is they would say they would pick up a benign thickening, and that would lead to unnecessary biopsies, unnecessary worry, unnecessary spending, all these things, which is true. I think that's a valid argument. So if you're one of those, then you may want to follow some of the other guidelines that just say, let's wait until you have unusual bleeding. Let's say if you're on hormone therapy, just started within the first 3 to 6 months, it would be quite normal to have a bleed. They call it a withdrawal bleed. It's not a real bleed. And usually it's not intense and heavy and crazy. But if it continues and it's heavy and it's really bothering you, then that's the time you'd go, okay, I want to just make sure that there's nothing wrong, right? So then your doctor would then go, okay, this is unusual bleeding. Let's check the uterine lining. Let's check everything else. We can do the tests, the scans, because you have a good reason for that. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of what I think is most important here. So for this woman who's over 60, she's taking estrogen, taking progesterone only half the month can bring a monthly bleed back. That's if she's okay with that. If she doesn't like that, you take it every single day. And the research is showing that whether you cycle it for around 14 days or whether you take it every single day, then usually at least the research shows that it's fine. It's like you should be able to control that uterine lining buildup. So some doctors say, like if they have you on a 14-day cycling program where you're on it for 2 weeks and then you're off of it for 2 weeks, then they would like to get you on, say, 200 milligrams of progesterone if you tolerate it. And then if you are taking consistently every day, then sometimes they go 100 milligrams. But again, everyone is different. This is just sort of a starting point that some doctors would have, but it's not set in stone. So if you don't feel good on 200 milligrams, you tell your doctor and then you can decrease it. Some doctors say, you got to increase it, right? Which can sound scary, but again, depends on what your practitioner is, what program they're following. Okay. So the next question from Garden Inspired Living. And again, she's also commenting on this Dr. Felice Gersch episode. And she says, I understand her logic and premise behind cycling progesterone. However, what do we do if it helps us sleep for 2 weeks of the month? Are we to not sleep? So no. And I don't think Dr. Gersch would disagree. I mean, if you're feeling good on the progesterone, it's helping you sleep and to help you feel more relaxed, you're getting all these benefits, I personally would say continue. She may argue that because she would say you're just sedating yourself. Something's not normal, because when you take progesterone orally, let's say, we're not talking about progesterone creams, it creates these metabolites that act on your GABA receptors. And these are receptors in your brain that help you feel calm and sleepy and sometimes groggy if too much. So she's questioning why are we sedating our brains and doesn't believe that's a good thing. And she may have a point there too, which is why it's good to go listen to that episode. I like when she challenges these things. But generally, a normal doctor would say, well, if you feel good on it, then continue on the progesterone. And that's what I would say. I think there would be more benefits than risks by taking the progesterone, because if you need to sleep, right, if it's helping you sleep, then you're going to get a lot of the benefits of sleep. You have better metabolism, your brain will benefit from it, your muscles, your bones, things repair, regenerate, your skin, your energy, your mitochondria, all these things are benefiting from good sleep and appropriate sleep and quality sleep. So I would say, gosh, I think that's pretty valuable. And then you take it every single day. Really no problem with that. The last question, progesterone without a uterus. This is from Deanne J. So with all your research on HRT, I have a question that I'm trying to figure out. I don't have a uterus, so I don't have to take progesterone. That's true. Her doctor would say you don't have a uterus, you don't need progesterone because you don't need to decrease that or control that uterine lining. So she continues to say, should I just take estrogen and testosterone and not use progesterone? Are there some proven long-term health risks associated with progesterone, like cancer, heart issues, etc.? Wouldn't I be safer to not use progesterone? Or is progesterone needed to actually make me healthier? I was using it 2 weeks a month, trying to optimize my health. I am 61 years old, but then I worried that it could possibly even increase my risk of cancer, dementia, heart disease, etc. With all of your research, what would you do if you didn't have a uterus, Sora? So this is the confusion. Do you hear the confusion? It's so prevalent. It's so normal to feel confused like that, especially you're in your 60s and you want to protect your 80-year-old self, and you know that the things that you do today really make an impact. So yeah, without a uterus, fine. The main job that doctors always talk about is to protect the uterine lining. I personally think it does a whole lot more. And your doctor will probably say, well, yeah, estrogen and your testosterone will be fine. It's absolutely enough for a 61-year-old without a uterus, as long as your symptoms and your labs look good. Because when I say test during menopause, it's not just testing your sex hormones. It's testing your insulin. It's testing your cardiovascular markers. It's testing your bone health. All these things are really important. And hormones have a lot to do with all of these things. So that's part of the whole game. Now, when you talk about the cancer, the heart, dementia, I think you're confusing some of the research that's on estrogen, namely oral estrogen, maybe the synthetic progestins, which is the fake progesterone, or it's the synthetic progesterone. So I hear you. It can be very confusing. So just to try to get everybody on the same page, we have these words called progestins, and that's usually referred to a synthetic progesterone, medroxyprogesterone acetate to be specific. You don't have to remember that, but that's what we'll always call it, the synthetic progesterone. And then we have the word progestogen, and that means all of this stuff. It means the progestins and it means the progesterone. And when I say progesterone, body identical progesterone, like if you look under a microscope, it looks exactly like the progesterone we made or that we are making. So your body is recognizing this pretty well. So that's some of the differences. And then when we talk about estrogen, well, what does that even mean? You hear a lot of people talking about estradiol, estriol, estrone. So in this conversation, we're just going to focus on estradiol. But then you may have heard of CEE, or conjugated equine estrogen. And that is the synthetic, we call it a synthetic estrogen because it comes from pregnant mare urine. Right. And it's effective and it's works. So there's some other risks attached to that. So I have a feeling you're maybe confusing all of these things. So I'll try to break it up a little bit. When it comes to the breast cancer risk, there was this big study called the Women's Health Initiative, and it was halted in 2002. And it made headlines and telling everybody hormones cause cancer. I believed it too. I remember that time. I remember telling myself, I will never take hormones. I'm not going to mess with that. Just, go natural. And so with that study, they used the synthetic estrogen, the conjugated equine estrogen, and they had a synthetic progesterone. And then that was one arm. Then we had another arm with just the synthetic estrogen. And then we had another arm, just the control group. What they found, and to this day, people seem to agree on it because a lot of people have debunked this study. And I think it is the largest study on hormones ever done. And it will never be repeated again because it was too costly. But people still extrapolate information from it because there is information and we just have to interpret it correctly. But in that study, they found out that the women who were on the estrogen and the synthetic progesterone, called progestin, that increased the risk of breast cancer. So it wasn't the synthetic estrogen that was causing the problem. It was the progestin, because what they found was that the group who had estrogen alone, and these are women who did not have a uterus, okay, so they could take just the estrogen, they actually lowered their risk of breast cancer. So the culprit really is that synthetic progestin. And so now we're waiting for data, enough data to every degree that say the transdermal estradiol, which is something that you would take on your skin, whether it's a patch, a gel, a cream, a spray, something like that, not orally, okay, plus a body identical micronized progesterone. That means just a normal progesterone. We're waiting to find agreement that does not increase the breast cancer risk. And it doesn't. As far as the research I've looked at, I just would love for everybody else to agree on all that. Now, when it comes to heart attacks and clots, again, you're probably thinking of the estrogen. It's not the progesterone that you're likely looking at. It's the oral estrogen, when you take estrogen as a pill, and it's that conjugated equine estrogen, and that has shown to increase the risk of heart attacks and clots. If you have a history of blood clotting, and the same thing goes for birth control, by the way, your doctor probably wants to not put you on a birth control or an oral estrogen. Okay, and this is a synthetic as well. But also in the WHI, they found that the conjugated equine estrogen, that synthetic estrogen, and that synthetic progesterone, that progestin, also increased the heart attack, stroke, and blood clot risk compared with the placebo group. and these, you have to keep in mind, in this study, was older postmenopausal women. And this was one of the problems, is that they didn't take women who had hot flashes and some of the typical menopause symptoms. They only looked at women. The average age was about 62, and they were in poor metabolic health. And so it's really hard to extrapolate sometimes this information into a woman who's in her 40s or 50s who really needs some of these hormones. So anyways, to put this into context with that, one of these studies I can put the link to the study in the show notes, because I was asking myself too, what does that mean, increases the risk? Is it really that significant? Because I was on birth control, and I do remember my doctor, when I was in my 20s, the doctor said, oh yeah, okay, it increases the risk of breast cancer and heart attack, but you're young, so don't worry about it. So I was kind of warned, but the doctor said, you're young, don't worry about it. But whatever. I actually have an episode with Dr. Carrie Jones coming up. Stay tuned for that one. So we discuss all of these things. But so I wanted to know, what does that mean actually? And so when you're talking about increase of cardiovascular events or heart attacks and strokes, actually, it's between 7 and 8 events per 10,000 women per year. So 7 extra heart attacks and 8 extra strokes for 10,000 women per year. So that's that. Now with the dementia piece, again, I cannot deny that there are women I work with and I see in the community who are in hormone therapy, menopause hormone therapy, using the estrogen and the progesterone, and they get their brain fog reversed. They feel better. They're more clarity. They remember things. It's like, we don't have the research to show all of this stuff. There is some, but not enough for everybody to agree. So when it comes to the dementia, I think what we're seeing is mostly with the synthetic progestins. If that's, again, we want to look at bioidentical estradiol or body identical. There are differences, but we're going to call them all the same. And then the body identical progesterone. Okay. And many of these studies are associations. They're not causations. So we have to pray that Dr. Lisa Mosconi's research is going to keep going and we get more and more information. But anyways, so it's not the progesterone that's dangerous for you. And we're talking about natural bioidentical progesterone. It wouldn't really be worried about that. You're just getting confused with the studies on the synthetic stuff. Okay. So if you're noticing a benefit, obviously, I think your goal is to just keep on your hormones. And I think estrogen and testosterone is definitely a great start. And then see if you're feeling any of the benefits of the progesterone. Why not? Right. And I think we'll get more and more research coming out showing that it's beneficial for bone or it's beneficial for your muscles. And it is, I believe, in an indirect way, it really is. So stay tuned for that. So that's it. I hope that answered your questions. I know it wasn't too long. We did it in less than 30 minutes. And I hope this was useful. If you did find it useful, please share this episode with somebody you think would love to hear it. It'll clear some of the confusion and the fears as well. But be your own health detective. You can also do a lot of this research, especially with the help of AI. I know it's not perfect. It's always good to become health literate. The more you read, the more you learn, the more podcasts you listen to, the more books that you read, and following people who you trust. And I always say, even if you trust them, be a little skeptical. It's always good to have a little healthy skepticism and see if these things work for you or they don't work for you. And as in that biohacking world that I really love, I'm a bit more of a bioslacker, I have to admit, not a biohacker, but I do like to test, measure, and assess and know where I'm at. And despite the research that shows all these great benefits or all these negative effects, I don't know where I lie. And that's why the more I understand my body and how it works, the closer I get to the truth and what works for me and what doesn't, despite it working for everybody else or not working for anybody else. So anyways, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you staying here with me to the end. I will see you next time, and have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you're at. If you love this show, but you don't always have an hour to sit and listen, then you're going to want to check out the brand new YouTube channel I created called Hack My Age Clips. This is where you're going to find all the best moments from every episode all in one place. And each one is about 10 minutes or even less. So if you want to leave the deep dive for later, this is where you want to go. And you can find it on the YouTube channel as Hack My Age Clips. The link to that is in the show notes in case you forget. And don't forget to subscribe. And if you like a clip that you love, please send it to a friend who needs to hear it.